Thank you so much. Thank you for your patience. I don't know where you got that write-up. It must have been somewhere on the internet. Seriously, though, it's been a real honor to be here with you this weekend. I've always wanted to come to the Luxembourg Animal Rights Conference since I heard about it. And I think it's really amazing that here we are in a former slaughterhouse, working at this conference to make the world a more peaceful place. So basically, we're turning this into a house of righteousness. And couldn't there be a better metaphor for what we need to do as humanity to go from harming animals to veganism? I also think it's really interesting why we get together in our society. I don't know how it is here, but in the States, hundreds of thousands of people will come together for hours just to watch cars go around in a circle on a weekend. You know, I know people that will pay lots of money and spend their free time, this precious time on this earth, hundreds of dollars just so they could sit in the front row of a basketball arena and watch grown men sweat on each other, exercise, and see who's better at pulling a ball inside a ring. You know, I like sports as much as the next guy, but these things don't matter in the greater scheme of things. But we've come here together this weekend to elevate society, to do something for others, and this is noble. And in this sense, you're all beautiful people, because there's so many people who have eyes but don't want to see, ears but don't want to hear, hearts but don't really fully feel, and they have brains but they don't want to make connections. But you have not forgotten the forgotten. And that's why all of you sitting here who speak up for the protection of the innocent, the vulnerable, the tormented, will always be special to me and part of my most sacred chosen family as activists. Thank you. As he mentioned, I work for a nonprofit called Vegan Outreach. We're a pretty simple operation. We hand out 16-page color pamphlets about going vegan by the millions, mostly to college students at concerts and at fairs and festivals. My own vegan and activist journey actually started with a leaflet. I was handed a Why Vegan pamphlet when I went to college by Nick Cooney, of all people. We went to college together. I don't know if you know him. He's an activist that wrote Change of Heart. So I know leafleting works because I'm a living example. And I want to talk to you today some of the reasons why we leaflet. In my own personal journey, too, after I left college, I started rescuing street dogs in Philadelphia. I lived in inner city Philadelphia. I'd see these skinny dogs running around or people throwing things at dogs. So, I wasn't really, who am I? I'm just a guy doing my thing. But I saw these dogs, so I started taking one dog, then I took in 2 dogs, then I took in 6 dogs, and I started to adopt that dogs. Then I got sucked into doing anti-fur campaigns, then I got heavily involved in the HLS campaign against animal testing. And I'm disgusted at all animal exploitation. But I finally, through hearing other people speak, I came to the understanding that if I keep taking in dogs, I could be a grown man that has 50 dogs in my house at most. But unfortunately, 99% of the animals that suffer on this planet that are exploited by humans are for food. So I could either take in these 50 dogs over the course of time, which would have been a very noble thing to do, but I don't want to just help. I want to do as much good as humanly possible while I have this time on Earth. I want to affect as many people to get involved as possible. So I realized that as much as I love dogs and I want people to help dogs, if I got 20 people to go vegan every day, I could save thousands of animals that day, not just 50, by taking in these dogs. So that's one of the reasons we leaflet, because by promoting veganism, we're hitting at the roots of animal exploitation. And everybody that goes vegan, obviously, if we reach college students at an average age of 20, if they don't eat meat for the next 50, 60 years, that's going to be thousands of animals that don't suffer over the course of time. Research has shown in Delaware and Maryland that for every 70 leaflets you hand out, a person goes vegetarian, vegan, or drastically reduces their meat consumption. So I could watch television or I could hit the streets for 2 hours, and I know in that short amount of time, if I knock out 1,000, 1,500 leaflets with my friends, that in just a few short hours of my time, I can change several dozen people's lives forever. And not only will each and every person that go vegan save those thousands of animals for the rest of their lives, furthermore, it's a social revolution. Everybody that becomes vegan, they start educating themselves, they become a living example to others. They're going to affect, hopefully, their parents, maybe their brother, their sister, their boyfriend, their girlfriend, maybe their mistress. You never know. It's a joke, sorry. You never know how far one leaflet that goes from a hand to heart can have. So that's why we leaflet. We're planting seeds. We're not going to get everybody. It's a numbers game, but we're getting, we can save tens of thousands of animals each and every day out there. Just want to check my notes real quick. had it the wrong way. So that's how I started leafletting. It's very simple. I'm a very shy person. I didn't have friends growing up. I had panic attacks. I was very shy. But if you're shy too, leafletting is a great thing to do. It'll get you over talking to others. You know, here I am talking in front of an audience, and I couldn't even talk to one person when I was younger. So things are not static. If you go out with your friends, you get out of your comfort zones. If you feel a little nervous in public, like I used to be, you know, don't be afraid. Just shrug your shoulders, take a deep breath. It's really not that big a deal, especially if you have a greater consciousness. You know, if I was only thinking about myself, then maybe it's a big deal. But if I start thinking about the animals and have a strong connection to them, we're not in a battery cage. We're not trapped on a factory farm. Feeling a little uncomfortable talking to the public or others is really not a big deal. It's the least that we could do because we're so fortunate to be born as human beings. We're not born into a being where we're mutilated or harmed for no reason. So I want to talk to you real quick about some of the techniques of leafletting. It's a super easy thing to do, but a little bit of technique will go a super long way. And I've been leafletting for about 8 years. Me and my friends have handed out over 1 million leaflets together. So you'll pick up little tricks. And you know, there's a lot of them, but I'm going to give you the best ones. If you're leafletting, you know, you might be nervous, you might be tense. Leafletting is 90% body language. So if you feel tense, you're going to be close. You might stand closer together. Most people, when they start leafletting, if it's a wide walkway, they'll stand close to an object or close to the side. Their hands will be close to their body. They'll speak softer, and they'll make it a question, like, can I give you some information? And the take rate is going to be very low. And then the following people will not take the leaflet. You'll have a terrible time. Less leaflets will go out. Less animals will be saved. So some of the pitfalls would be to keeping your arm close to your body, hugging an object. It's like second nature. So many people do it when they start. So if you're with a friend, you can remind them to stand a little bit more in open space. Another thing is you want to lock your arm all the way out, lean towards people a little bit, and you don't want to hand out the leaflet to the side of your body. They're already halfway past you. If you leaflet, you want to hand it in front of your body, maybe a little lean, so that they have to come across you. They're much more likely to take the leaflet. So if you just like, you know, hey, what's going on, man? Good morning, guten tag, you know, kind of help stop suffering, make it a statement in front of your body, boom, people will take it. More people take it. Big thank you, like, oh, thank you so much, merci beaucoup, you know, you're the best, have an awesome day. You know, I like your style, a little compliment. You know, people will take the leaflet, you know. You're not a bad-looking man, you know, whatever it takes, keep the take rate going. And if someone doesn't take it, you could be really laid back about it. If you start leafing, people will be tense, they'll feel bad, they'll feel crappy. It's a numbers game, not everybody's gonna take it, no big deal. A thumbs up is really huge, unless you're in Saudi Arabia, where I think that means you're an a-hole. But if, you know, thumbs up, like, oh, you don't want one? Great, you already got one, because you're not really worried about this person that walked by us, worried about people that are watching. If there's 30 people watching, they saw we had a pleasant interaction, they're more likely to take it. And I can't emphasize enough, a big thank you will keep the take rate much higher. So a little technique will have a profound, profound difference. And if I could ask Kimberly to come demonstrate the gauntlet. One of my favorite leafing techniques, Kimberly, you're the best. You guys are so nice. So Kimberly, she's at work at NASA, and she started dating me. I don't know, she could probably find somebody better, but she left her job to leaflet for the animals full time, so I think that's pretty commendable. But for me, leafletting has always been a lot of like sex, if we can talk like friends here. It can be fun by yourself, but it's a lot more fun with 2 people. And with 4 or 5 people, it's fantastic. So leafletting, you know, the more people you get involved, the better it is. So one of the things I like to do with a volunteer or my girlfriend is what I call the gauntlet. And if we're a wide walkway, it can be awkward to have to walk up to people. It's a little strange. If you just stand parallel side by side, if it walkways from this wire to the speaker over there, we split the difference. If somebody walks by here, I can just get them. If they walk in the middle, I can get them. And if we're just talking, and if we're just talking side by side, like, oh, how was your day? Yeah, John, he's a jerk, blah, 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 you know, whatever, just they're hanging out together, like, you know, no big deal. We got to talk anyway. And then people come by, we give them the leaflet. It makes leafletting a lot less nervous when you're with somebody else. The one key thing is if you do the gauntlet with someone, if you work at a nonprofit, is you want to turn and face people as they come. Because it gets very easy to be lazy and you're talking to one another, you know, you're handing it here, people are halfway by you. Make sure you turn and face, you know, if somebody's coming here, you turn and face this way. You got to move a little bit. People that are more experienced leafletters, you'll see they move a lot more. People that start, sometimes they have lead feet. It's perfectly fine to go up to somebody like, oh, hey, what's going on, man? Help stop suffering. Have a great day. And if you're leaders in the movement here at this conference, I mean, the greatest goal that you can have, thank you so much, you're the best, is to create and birth other activists. I mean, it's a social revolution. One person can only do so much. We need to build an army of people getting out there and hitting the streets. You know, and you can explain to people like, hey, you could watch that show again, you could surf the internet, or let's go hit the streets for 2 hours, then we'll play around. Because we can we can change thousands of animals' lives that we'll never meet, which also is very commendable. So I think it's very important. I believe it's Nietzsche who said that people who have a why can bear any how. So it's very important to explain to volunteers that you go out with that, yes, we're handing out paper, and it's not that rewarding on some levels because people take it, they read it, they're affected, you'll never talk to them. But we have to inculcate, people have to know what actually happens. Okay, for every statistics have shown, by the way, that for every 2 leaflets you hand out, over the course of time, it is the equivalent of 1 farm animal being saved. Or then you have the 1 to 70 statistic. So if you and your friends hand out 1,000 leaflets, logically, like 8 to 15 people are going to go vegan or cut down their meat consumption, which is amazing. Because if I told each and one of you today, hey, I want everybody here to get 10 people to go vegetarian by 3 p.m. or 1,500, what would you do? It seems like it would be so difficult. By handing out pieces of paper, boom, it's going to happen. So that's the beauty of leafletting. It's very simple. It costs next to nothing. It costs us pennies on the dollar to print out these leaflets. And if it cost me $35 or euros just to one person go vegan, or 30 euros, I mean, that's nothing to save thousands of animals. And that's why leafletting is one of the utilitarian farm animal forms of advocacy. I love sanctuaries, and this is a painful truth, like in the US, there's a proliferation. There's a growth in sanctuaries. There's like 500 sanctuaries now. I love to pet the cows as much as the next person, but the truth, unfortunately, is that in Mexico, for example, we reach 350,000 students with a case for veganism by leaflets for the same price as taking care of 2, 3, or 4 sick cows per year. So leafletting costs next to nothing, and the dividends are awesome. So when you have volunteers with you, it's very important that they realize that a herd of animals are being saved over the course of time. One of the other fantastic things about hitting the streets is not only do we undermine corporate media by getting this important message into the hands of our fellow citizens, but we have the opportunity to interact with other people. A lot of people may know a vegan, may not, but I'm always surprised at how many people come back with questions after they read a leaflet. So one of the joys of leafletting is talking to so many people one-on-one. I mean, there are some unjoys too, which is also very important for new leafleters if you have volunteers with you. If you meet one person says, like, I love bacon, I'm going to go have a cheeseburger now, are you with PETA, people eating tasty animals? I'm always surprised at how few jerks I meet, but if you could save 15,000 animals over the course of time and have 3 people tell me I like eating cheeseburgers, I mean, that's something I would take. I don't care. So there's time to be sensitive and there's a time not to be sensitive. Leafletting is not a time to be sensitive. Who cares? It's not a big deal to have a little bad comment. Leafletting provides the opportunity to speak to people one-on-one. And that's one of my favorite things about it, because people have questions and we can be great role models and voices for the animals. Speaking to people one-on-one, there's one main appeal I've narrowed it down to that is probably the most effective if you're talking to people. And I'd like to share this particular one in further depth. I call it the dog and pig analogy. What we're essentially trying to do is to transfer people's love of their dogs and cats onto farm animals, because clearly they have eyes, ears, blood, emotions, legs. There's no damn difference between a dog and a pig except for in people's minds where we have separations. So if people ask me questions, I'd be like, oh, well, think about it. What if I took a puppy here in this square at this college and I put this little dog in a headlock and I started to pull his teeth out by pliers one by one, and then I took his testicles off with no anesthesia. And I know it sounds gross, but we might not be able to play chess with a pig, but they feel pain just as much as we do. We can't even begin to imagine how painful that would be. And then what if I cut his tail off while he's screaming bloody murder in front of everyone, and I put the little puppy in a box, and the puppy can't even turn around for months on end? I mean, how would people think about that here in this college? Most people would think that I'm a lunatic, that I'm a psychopath. They would call security or the police. I would go to prison for felony animal cruelty. But the obvious logical conclusion now is, if that's how we react if someone did that to this puppy, Why is it right to eat ham and bacon and pay someone to do word for word the same exact thing to a pig? Obviously, there is no difference. There's no difference if it's wrong to torture a pig. If it's wrong to torture a dog, how can it be right to torture a cow, pig, chicken? So, as activists, we can't force anyone to do anything. Even when I had my dogs, I couldn't get some of my dogs to sit. I'm not good at forcing people to do anything. It's not about forcing, but it's about helping people make the connections themselves. Speaking of which, talking to people one-on-one, since it's a social revolution, one of the big mistakes I see people making is trying to outthink people into veganism. Unfortunately, we're rational beings, but we're not really rational beings. We all know fast food is bad for us. We know smoking is bad for us. And to be honest with you, it made me kind of sad to see so many people smoking here, because I love my fellow vegans and activists. Hate to see get sick or harmed. So people don't change their behavior necessarily for just rational reasons. So when you speak up for the animals, I think the number one most important thing is that people have an emotional connection to the suffering of the animal. Then other rationalizations can come later. If I was talking to a college class right now, I could talk for 2 hours about the one-on-one personal appeals, and if that's something that interests you, we can talk at depth later in the conference. But I wanted to run through a few basic things. When you talk to people one-on-one, I think it's very important to always start and end with animal suffering. That's the number one reason people should be encouraged to go vegan, and obviously that is also the number one reason people do go vegan. That being said, I'm an environmentalist, so I used to always talk about the environment so much. Research in the United States has shown the second biggest reason people go vegan is for health. So after the animals, I talk about health, how much better it is for your heart, autoimmune, less cancer, bone density, all that kind of stuff. Following that, I like to discuss sometimes the environment, they're cutting down the rainforest, global warming, what a waste it is of resources. It takes 1/18 the amount of resources to feed a vegan as a meat eater. People don't consider that. So there's many different appeals you can work down the line. And as long as somebody has a brain or a heart, they're going to respond to one of them, unless they're completely recalcitrant. Some other appeals I like to go through. One of my absolute favorites after the dog and pig analogy is what I like to go the Gary Yourofsky appeal. A little shout out to Gary from his famous video. Just to ask people, are we really natural carnivores? If you haven't seen the video, it's fantastic. YouTube, the best video ever. But mention to people, are we really natural carnivores? Think about it. Our jaws go left and right, not up and down like a carnivore. The digestive enzymes in the roof of our mouth are for plain carbohydrates. They're not for animal flesh. Our intestines are super long like a herbivore. Carnivores have short intestines. Meat is rotting flesh. You got to consume it, eliminate it. Human beings, when you're a child, have zero carnivorous instincts. They see a bunny, they're not going to chase after it. A dog sees a squirrel, it's going to go nuts. Our hands, we don't have claws. When we're hot, we don't pant, we sweat. It would be disgusting for us to be natural carnivores. It'd be hard for us to chase down a deer and then to eat its eyes, anus, blood, guts, So it's kind of a very thought-provoking thing that I've had very good responses from when I talk to people one-on-one. And from there, you can also discuss ethics. And I think it's very important for us to think about philosophically as a movement as well, that nothing is static. It seems like it's so overwhelming how screwed up the world is, but if you take a step back, you see that things are always changing. Black people for a long time existed only for white people. That's ended, thankfully, slavery, even though there's still residual injustice. For a long time, women couldn't get a divorce, couldn't get a right to vote. Women do not get equal pay as men, and there's still injustices against women, but things are improving. Being a homosexual in the United States was classified as a mental illness in the late 70s. Thankfully, gay marriage is now becoming legal, thank God, or thank the universe. Furthermore, clearly, the next logical step is, little children used to work in factories, textile mills, mines. That's been seen as a wrong now, and the obvious next logical conclusion is how we treat animals is the next one to go. So I think it's encouraging for us to have faith in that, because I know people get very cynical doing activism sometimes, even doing outreach. It's not easy, to talk to people 8 hours a day and not have, I wish that every person who got a leaflet went vegan, and unfortunately that's just not the case. So one of the ways that I remain not cynical is that I just talk to people. I realize that I ate meat most of my life too. So I feel like I'm talking to myself before I had this consciousness. And my job is not so much to judge as to educate and kind of, love in a sense. And I think it's very important to just touch on cynicism for 1 second, because what is cynicism? It's like an emotional wound, it's a cut, it's a defense mechanism, it's a barrier, and we're trying to reach people. If you're cynical, that's like a weakness in the level, like an emotional weakness. Like, I don't want to be hurt, so I'm going to assume the worst of everyone and everything. I'll become invulnerable. But that's a really crappy way to go through life, and it's a very crappy way to go through doing outreach. Because the world doesn't need any more cynicism, and the world doesn't need our weakness, the world needs our strength. Now, the world needs your strength, it needs your dedication, your perseverance, your passion. So I encourage you not to be cynical or get down. Another thing, all these people, they're not concerned about animals, they're not concerned about the environment, they're not concerned about their health. Sometimes speaking to heavily religious people, sometimes they have like a brick wall, like Jesus smiles every time an animal suffers, or animals exist just for us. Then you can talk more about human issues, because animal rights, human rights, veganism is really a human issue. Obviously, veganism is just including more. It could be another word for love, progress, truth. For some religious types, I'll talk about human suffering as it relates to animals. For example, many people don't consider that it takes 12 to 16 pounds of grain to produce 1 pound of beef. That on an acre of land, you could grow 50,000 pounds of potatoes, 20,000 pounds of tomatoes, or 250 pounds of beef. So it's a profoundly human issue in the sense that we're wasting our grain and resources to feed only the global rich. And the fact remains that every 10 to 13 seconds, a child dies of hunger in this world. I mean, somebody dies of hunger, overwhelming majority of them being children. So essentially, I try to point out to people that every child that dies of hunger is a murdered child if we could feed them, but we choose not to. So especially for people that don't care about animals, you can talk about the profoundly human issues. Or if they're religious, you can mention how, all children of God should be fed. We're all the children of creation, what have you. You can mention the body's the temple. The Garden of Eden was vegan. But unfortunately, it's a little harder to penetrate certain people, but so it goes. Another thing that's great to mention is just, if you feel down that people are berating you or not being so responsive to the message, you just remind yourself, who's on your team? You got Gandhi on your team, you got Buddha, you got Saint, we got everybody in this room on your team. So never feel alone when you're out there talking. It can't be bad to have Gandhi, Einstein on your squad. I'll roll with them any day, and I'll roll with you any day. So when you're out there on the streets, if you happen to be by yourself and, it's kind of tough, you're not really there by yourself, because they're with you. Billions of animals trapped in their cages are rooting you on, wish that they could be there. And millions of people care about this issue all around the world. I mean, touring through Mexico, I get chills thinking about it. They get 3,000 people out to a bullfighting demo. There's so many people who want to help volunteer every day. Never forget that we're not alone. There's millions of people that support this cause. And if you're on the streets by yourself, of course you're not by yourself. And obviously, every time you're on the pavement, I'll be rooting you on in spirit as well. You guys are the best. Thank you. And lately now, this is really in vogue, like humane treatment of animals, I ate this chicken, but the chicken had a great life. Most of it's a scam. They have, these huge sheds, and they may not be in a cage, but there's a little space where, 4 of them can go outside, so they're a pasture raised. It's a scam, obviously. But something to point out people when they point that out is the compassion appeal. It's not humane. If you wouldn't want it done to yourself, but it's being done to somebody else, it's not humane. It's not compassion. And I don't care if you pet me to death, I'd rather be alive. So that's a comment that sometimes wakes them up a little bit. Talking to people too is kind of like touch and go, because you have to read them. There's no one right answer. You have to feel people out, what they care about, what they're more responsive to. Some people, less is more. If you tell them 15 things at once, if you tell them that, there's global warming, there's a refugee crisis, we got to be vegan, the animals are suffering, one day the sun is going to explode and swallow the earth. It's too much emotional and intellectual information. They're more likely to dismiss you. That's why if you have repeated exposure to a friend or a coworker, it can sometimes be super effective to, tell them one thing one day, wait a week or two, tell them a little about the environment, another 2 weeks, tell them a little nugget about the Gary Yourofsky appeal. If you have repeated exposure to someone, sometimes talking to them slowly about it is more lasting change. And another thing with outreach is you can never give up on another person. You can't give up on yourself, obviously, as an activist, and you can't give up on other people. And I've always been amazed with how things are not static. That applies not just to justice, but to other human beings. Like we mentioned before, like I'm not the same at 15, you're not the same at 15 as you're gonna be at 25. You're not gonna be the same once you have a child or your parents pass away. You know, the way we relate to the world is changing as we educate and as we grow. So you gotta have love for people you're talking to, that they might be at a lower vibration of consciousness, but one day they may be at a much higher vibration. It's not for us to judge as much as to push them along or encourage them. Along that vein, I've had like crazy stories happen. When I first went vegan, my best friend Anthony was a massive jerk about it. He's like, it's a personal choice, I don't wanna hear it, and I wasn't even talking about it that much time. I can't emphasize, I don't wanna waste time, but I can't emphasize how much of a jerk he was about it. He's now more vegan than I am. My good buddy Phil, he's supposed to tour with me for 2 days. We ended up touring together for like 9 months. He's a great activist. He now does something called the Vegan Bros with his brother Matthew. His father was a fairly fundamentalist Christian in like basically he calls it a cult himself. And he's still a Christian, which is that's fine if that's what he chooses. But what's fascinating, he would have long discussions. He would not budge and not even a millimeter about anything regarding veganism. He's been vegan now for 3 years. So, I was speaking to somebody recently in Santa Monica, California, and we're hanging out. I was talking to her about these issues. I saw her 3 more times here and there. I kind of did the best I could. I spoke about it for like 45 minutes. Give my best spiels, try to be a voice. She wasn't hearing it. She now told me, sort of right before I left, she said she's mostly vegetarian now. She's got to get rid of cheese, and she has chicken once a month or something. So don't ever give up on other people. Also, sometimes it can be very difficult to talk to our families, people we really care about. Like if we hit them too hard, sometimes there's power dynamics. They don't want to, hear what you're having to say. So unfortunately, to the animals, it doesn't, of course, keep trying to get the people you love to go vegan. But one of the great things about leafletting is you could spend 30 years banging your head against the wall to someone that's really close to you. They may not want to go vegan. Or you could hit the streets and guaranteed you'll get somebody to go vegan. So in a weird way, it's more productive to reach out to strangers if the people in your social circle are not super responsive. One thing while you're all here that I wanted to speak to people at the conferences, I'm now the Director of International Outreach for Vegan Outreach, so if you want to start a program in your country, if you need any advice, we're a growing organization, but we have limited resources. We're in, I believe, 6 countries now. We're going on a tour of the UK, me and Kimberly, to try to start a program in the UK. We're fundraising for that as well. So if you're a person of means, you want to support a program in your country, the UK, would love to talk to you. Furthermore, leafletting is a beautiful thing to do as a volunteer. As a job, I feel like the luckiest person on earth. As I started to give to the animal rights movement gave everything to me. I mean, my life has been such a strange thing that I had no friends growing up, and now I've met so many people. And you guys got to travel, got to talk to people, to live with, have purpose in your life. I used to be a security guard where I used to lock doors, hundreds of doors a day, and stand in parking lots for 8 hours a day. So I'm really thankful I get to be an activist. If you have an interest in being an activist, we're looking to hire somebody for the UK within 6 months or a year. And it's a great job for the right person. Touring for 16 weeks, it's a grind. Getting up 5 in the morning, leafleting for 5, 6, 7 hours, driving, hanging out with people. It's a dream come true for the right person. But if you're like a vegan soldier, you like hitting the streets, you like talking to people, you like travel, come and talk to me because we need to find somebody that wants to be part of this project. And even though I try to be positive, sometimes I do get overwhelmed at the enormity of the animal suffering. And I just want to end with one thing, that yes, animals don't have the freedom, billions of animals don't have the freedom from harm. They don't have the freedom to play. They don't have the freedom to stay intact. They're mutilated. Clearly, so many of them can't even turn around in their cages. They don't have the freedom to a peaceful end. If we get sick, we can see a doctor. They have innocence, but not justice. But there is one thing they do have. They have you, they have me, they have millions of people around the world fighting for this issue. And as long as we keep fighting, there's only one way we're going to end up with, is in victory. And leafletting is going to be a big part of that. Thank you so much for hearing me out. Thank you so much. You're the best. Does anybody have any questions?
Thanks for the talk. Michael Weberman mentioned yesterday that what keeps people vegan is animal rights. And you said that different people require different reasons to go vegan. So how do you combine the both? So if someone's more interested in the environment, but that has shown not to keep people vegan in any case, in all cases.
That's a great question. First, if I'm an animal in a cage, I don't care why you don't eat meat, as long as you don't eat meat. And I realized just that I think sometimes, I know people who, they went vegan because of an ethical appeal. So then they talk to everybody about ethics. I used to coach basketball with inner city kids, these black kids. And some of them, you yell at them, you're gonna get the best performance out of them. Another kid, you yell at him, he's gonna fail on you. So it's just being sensitive to there's different, everybody responds to different things. Another kid, you believe in him, he's gonna believe in himself. He'll never let you down. So I agree with Michael Weberman that, just like I mentioned, like animal suffering should be the first and the last appeal. And I believe that people that go vegan for the animals, not for themselves, are more likely to remain vegan. That being said, I will talk about any issue that gets them going in that direction. And I think one of the beauties about veganism is that most people, I don't know about your experience, but many people I've seen, they go vegan for one reason, and then it opens up this like umbrella of they start to learn about other issues. And I hope that that's the case. But I don't have any better answer than that. Thank you so much for your question.
Oh. Hello. I have a question about the trade-off. If you talk to people, you're obviously not handing out leaflets. So it probably doesn't make sense to talk to a hunter for like 20 minutes or so. So how long do you talk to people typically, and what's the maximum before you go on to the next one?
Well, that's a phenomenal question. Because sometimes people start leafleting and somebody starts talking to them. They're not interested in going vegan. They want to have a debate. It's a waste of your time. If they just want to have a debate and poop on what you have to say, they're not open, then it's like, okay, I'll talk to you later, look at the stuff online. I like to leaflet with my friends. That way, like I go out leafleting, we hand out 8,000 leaflets. I got 5 people there with me. That if somebody has a lot of questions, the 4 people can keep leafleting and I can talk to them as long as I think it's useful. That being said, if I'm by myself, and for colleges, it's mostly busy for 20 minutes during the class change. And if somebody's talking to me then, I'll be like, it's only busy now, I have to get these people. Here's my card, or come back in 15 minutes, I would love to talk to you. Because I don't want to miss the hundreds of people that are walking by. So I think you have to feel it out. That being said, if somebody's like right on the cusp of going vegan, but just has like 1 or 2 basic questions, how do I get my protein? That's something I forgot to mention too. That's something here in America all the time, in the United States, because everybody's into lifting weights now. It's, it's a very metrosexual thing, especially in California, taking the creatine. I like to point out too, obviously, that gorillas, bison, elephants, the strongest animals in nature are all vegan. But anyway, thank you so much for your questions. I hope that answered it.
Okay, here, and I would like to ask if you have like a Spanish version of the leaflets and available for people. I imagine I come from Spain, and we can like get probably some leaflets or to give them there or something like that.
Yeah, I believe we'd have to talk to Animal Equality. They may have pamphlets for distribution there. In the United States, we have a Spanish language booklet, and we have a booklet specifically designed for Mexico, which we could ship, but ideally it would be something that's culturally relevant. And Vegan Arts doesn't have one, but I'm pretty sure Animal Equality has literature for distribution.
Hi, I've been doing a lot of leafleting in Luxembourg with quite a few people here, actually.
Oh, thank you.
And sometimes we do get down, and as the leader, I kind of get a bit like, okay, another person who's just ignoring me. Have you got any tips on how to keep rallying people? So, when we've done it for 12 hours, I dress up, which most people know, and look ridiculous, but I don't think that always makes people motivated.
There's infinite sources of inspiration. If I feel down or have volunteer, like I'll show them Earthlinks, which is like the brutal way to do it. Forget we're here for a very specific reason. But I also think that it's good to be sustainable. I cannot leaflet every single day. I cannot leaflet for 12 hours a day. I have to leaflet for 5 hours, 4 hours. I need to take time off in the summer. Kind of like what Melanie Joy was referring to. I think that it's a marathon, not a sprint. That being said, like if I'm with my friends, I'm just hanging out. I would talk to my girlfriend anyway if we weren't leafleting, so why don't we just hang out? I like to have a light heart. Just because the world is serious and we're all going to face illness, death, and like the animals are suffering, doesn't mean that life is any less funny. I draw a lot of strength from Elie Wiesel. When he's in Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning, where he's in a concentration camp, the worst thing a human being could probably experience, but he still chooses to love life, humor, give himself. So if he can have laughter in a concentration camp, we can have it while leafletting. So I just try to keep a light heart. Sometimes I make fun of the people that say stupid things with my volunteers so that they don't feel discouraged. I was like, oh, what an idiot that guy was. Like, I would hate to be his wife or whatever it takes. Just keep a light heart, And also, I generally, when I leaf, I banter with people, like, oh, what's going on, man? Like, like just little comments and friendly people come back. So I'd like to leaf it with y'all. I don't know how y'all do it, but I think, to be honest with you, too, the technique makes a big difference. I've leafed with a bunch of people where it's all helter-skelter. If there's a line of people, then if you have just like a line of 3 or 4 people, the techniques make such a big difference. So I think the technique is huge, and then having the Nietzschean, like the why. Why are we doing this? Because leafletting can be thankless. You don't see a herd of animals saved. It's a lot less rewarding on some levels than other forms of activism. So having that mental understanding of all the good that we're doing, I think, is huge.
Hi. First of all, thank you for your inspiring speech. But I was just wondering, you brought up Jurowski a couple of times. And I know I'm like on thin ice maybe now, but I was just wondering why you were referring to him, even though I know it's a great speech he first gave, but you probably also know about the rape comments, etc., that he gave. So I was wondering why you would include him.
Wait. I'm not an expert on Gary Yourofsky, and Gary may have gotten that information from someone else, but I learned it first from watching the video, so I didn't want to just like pretend like I'm the one that came up with it. So I don't really have any emotional connection. I mean, I've met Gary before, I've seen him speak in person. I know that people in the movement may have personal issues with others. I think who it's named for, the personal appeal, is not so important as the information. So that's the best I got. It does. I just want people to know that are we really natural carnivores, and how healthy we can be on a herbivorous diet. So it doesn't really have anything to do with Gary, and I don't know about his personal life or the drama he may or may not be involved in.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. But I was also wondering if your leaflet, do you also mention him as a source? Because I think it might be dangerous if people...
Actually I don't. I don't mention him as a source. I just did it here in the audience because I didn't want to... I got it from him, so I just wanted to acknowledge that I learned it from his video.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Hi, and thank you for your speech. It was very inspiring. I have been leafletting for 1 year in Denmark. Woohoo! And I love it so much, and it's so nice. And of course, when the weather is better, it's good. But I would say, how do you motivate volunteers? I think that's one of the, yeah.
Well, when I have volunteers, I'm like a soccer mom. I pick them up, so it's brainless for them. I'll pick them up early in the morning. You just have to get in my car. I'll tell you where to stand. I'll bring the leaflets. I tend to take my volunteers out to lunch afterwards. And this transcends leafletting, just any form of activism. I think there needs to be a social component. It can't just be all death and dismemberment, all like going to the demo screaming, let's go have a drink, let's go have to lunch, let's tell a few jokes, let's, here, Betty, this is Bobby, introduce people to one another. It makes activism a lot more sustainable. So I just try to take care of my volunteers and make them feel appreciated, and then, ad nauseum, explain why we're doing it. And I hate to say it, but if you work for an organization, volunteers are flaky. It's just the nature of the game. So just like leafletting is a numbers game, if I have a big event coming out, I'll invite 12 people, maybe 8 people will come. I'll invite 6 people, maybe 4 people come. I used to organize parties and fundraisers in Philadelphia, and people would be like, this is the most amazing party I've been to, because there's 80 people there. They don't know that I invited 500 people. So the more people you invite, the more people are likely to come along. But I just feed people, make them feel appreciated, explain why we do it, and not everybody's the same. Some people love leafletting. Some people want to come out once in a while. So I try to feel them out how much involved they want to do. Because if the people feel like pressured to leaflet all the time, then maybe they won't come out as much. And also, leafleting should be fun. It shouldn't. I mean, yes, it's hard work on some levels, but it's it should be enjoyable. And hopefully, I was interested in Melanie's Joy Talk, where we talk about all the pains there is as an activist and compassion fatigue and things of that nature, the secondary PTSD or what I forget what it's called. But I don't know about you, but I feel good doing activism because I feel like every time we're out there leafleting, every time we're at a demo, every time we're talking to somebody about these issues, we're bringing the world like that much closer to being better. So hopefully people feel good doing activism as well. And we can gently remind them about all the good that they're doing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the very good speech. I really like leafleting too. It's been 10 years that I'm part of an animal rights group and we leaflet a lot.
Where's that?
It's in Switzerland.
Okay, awesome.
Thanks. And maybe there are also some other tips that we can add. For example, the eye contact. I really realized that when you see the person, you say hello. In the moment that you have the eye contact, you give the flyer. It is much more chance that it is taken. So also another point you said when there are some people who say I love meat. There is a good thing to answer. You say just, I love the meat too. And it destroys the barrier they try to create by saying, yeah, he's the vegan guy, I'm the meat eater. When you say it, I love the meat too, like they don't have this barrier anymore, so they have to think about the issue. And also another thing that in Switzerland we made leafleting in 5 different colleges. We had 5 different flyers. All focused on animal rights because we have chose this idea that it is good for people to understand that the animal issue is sufficient to go vegan, to stop animal exploitation. So we chose just to center on these arguments. But in these 5 different flyers, we saw via statistics that we asked questions afterwards to a big scale of people who were going to these colleges, and we saw that the ones that that had the greater impact. The first is one that has speciesism on the title. It's pour en finir avec le spécisme. It's called Let's End Speciesism. And I think it's the fact because the term is unknown, so people read the flyer, they want to know what it's all about.
Well, I would love to hear a lot more about it after the talk as well.
Yeah,
like
and also the second one is it was the studies about ethology facts that show that animals are very similar to us in a lot of aspects. So maybe these are also 2 elements that we can put in the flyers.
That's fantastic. Also, and we're talking to one-on-one, I think it's also very powerful to say that, your dog is happy when sees you come home. They're afraid of thunder. They have emotions. When getting people to cut out dairy, it's very powerful to talk about how the mothers will bellow for, weeks when their baby's taken away from them. And I didn't realize how hardcore you guys were in leafleting. A few things I wanted to mention then, if you're hardcore and you have volunteers, is some people, when they start leafleting, they'll hand the leaflet out when there's another step or 2 for the person to take. Ideally, you want a leaflet so that the leaflet comes fully extended, a little lean, just as they're passing by. So that all they have to do is just open up their thumb. So if you have people that are leafleting with you and they hold it out for a while, or they don't take it back, try to encourage them to hand it out so just as the person's walking by, they can just open up their thumb. And other people, when they leaflet, sometimes they'll have it really high or low, or the people have to reach for it. You want to make it so that it's right where their hand is, so they have a minimal hand movement. So there's actually hundreds of little things about leafleting. I didn't want to bore anybody, but if you're a hardcore leafleting and want to talk shop more, I'd be super happy to talk to you.
And I just remembered another trick. When someone doesn't take the flyer, the 2 after him don't give the flyer, so that the other ones because he won't take it anyway, because if one person in front of him refuses, he don't want to take it. So if you refuse to if you don't give it to the 2 others, actually the 3rd one will take it. He say, he chose me to give the flyer.
Sweet, I've never tried that, but I have stopped leafleting sometimes if the taker is very low. but I'm kind of sick. I psychologically profile people. You know, if I see somebody with a cell phone or head, or like there's 40 people and the first person looks a little grumpy, a little older, like I might let that person go by and get the first person in line. I'm gonna go for the person I think is most likely to take it. But yeah, it's amazing how much you learn about human nature just by leafleting. And it's also amazing how much more, you know, if you leaflet regularly and then you go to party, like you're not gonna be shy because you're so used to talking to public. You'll just be like, oh, hey, what's going on, everybody, you know? So there's a lot of intangibles to the leafleting, I found. But thank you so much for what you had to share. Anybody else?
Hello. Thank you for your inspiring speech. I'm very curious about the content of the leaflet you use. I don't know if you have a sample of one of your leaflets with you. Otherwise, I will really love to know how do you choose what you put in it, how many pages, what do you talk about.
Yeah, are you done? I'm so sorry.
Sorry?
We're picking up flyers for the UK trip, specifically for the United Kingdom, and I ran out of my house. I forgot to bring copies of our Vegan Outreach flyers.
Too bad.
They're all online at veganoutreach.org, and we actually have 5 different flyers. We have one that's a compassionate eating guide that people that are interested in going vegetarian or eating less meat, that has like, you know, tons of resources, explains how to do it in depth, which is great too, because if you don't have forever to talk to someone, you can just give them the pamphlet, they can learn about it on their own time. We also have a compassionate athlete booklet, which is super popular now. All these guys carrying their water and drinking their creatine, trying to get muscular. It has all these super muscular people that are vegan and explains what they do with some animal suffering in it. And then we have a Compassionate Choices, a booklet that has a mixed age demographic. It has older people, middle-aged people, younger people. If you're leafleting, like say a festival with mixed age demographic. Then we have a leaflet, Your Choice, which is only for college. It's basically for college students. All the people there are college students. Just so you know, we've been leafleting for about, I think, 16 years now, so we've done a lot of psychological research. So the pamphlets now are like scientific. We personalize the names of the animals, like Meet Kevin. There's been a lot of thought into being effective with what's in the pamphlet. And we also have another leaflet that's a little controversial every now and then called Even If You Like Meat. That it's the most graphic of our booklets, but the cover says, even if you like meat, you can spare, we could spare billions of animals of suffering if everybody cut down on eating meat. And I use that leaflet a little bit less, but it's mainly used for more conservative demographics. Sometimes if you talk about, if I'm in Wyoming 10 years ago and I talk about veganism, someone who's never even heard the word, like, what's a veggie? If it's too alien, studies have shown that they're less likely to, go that direction. So for some of those people, we'll hand out, and we have hundreds and hundreds of people writing us all the time that went vegan from getting even if you like meat. But, if like the abolitionist set would cringe at that pamphlet, but it's very effective. So they're all available online at veganoutreach.org. You can also order them online, and hopefully we'll grow enough that we'll be able to provide, a bunch in more and more places. Anybody else?
Yeah, one last question, maybe. How do you deal with a freezing temperature? Like in the winter you leaflet outdoor at all? Or?
Well, I'm the worst, because I was born in Sweden, even though I came to the States when I was 7. But I'm like the worst Swedish person in the world because I don't like IKEA, ABBA, hockey, or the cold. So I think it's just common sense, like layer up. We have skin. If you wear long johns, you dress warm. I did a tour of Canada in February. It was miserable. Leafleting, unfortunately, is not always, it's more effective sometimes when it's a little bit warmer because then people are more likely to stop and talk to you. A lot of times if you're at a college, I don't know, I haven't been to Denmark or Germany to leaflet, but sometimes I'll go inside a building, and another super effective thing if you're on a college campus, which is like cheating, is if there's one doorway to a building, you can put your foot on the back of the door, and because like you're doing something nice for somebody, like every single person takes it as they go in, and especially if you're freezing, it helps to get some warm air there or inside the lobby. No, but there's no easy answer. I'm spoiled rotten. I toured for over 6 years with no home, which is actually kind of funny because I was a professional guest. And I was very shy, so it was strange to be at people's houses. And they'd be like, oh, make yourself at home, make yourself at home. But I felt very uncomfortable. But after being on the road for 4 years, now they say, make yourself at home. But then they look at me funny when I grab a glass of wine and I read in the bathtub for 5 hours. But no, but I would just say layer up. And, if it's super cold, then leaflet when it's busy, go inside, take breaks. I sometimes would get coffee for people so they could hold it in their hands to warm up their hands. But, leafleting part of it is suffering. I like to say we suffer so the animals don't have to. A little suffering is good for the soul. So You know, he's a boxer. You know, he could take it. No, but be safe and dress warmly will make it a lot better, I imagine. But you know, leafletting in the cold is very tough sometimes, and I'm spoiled rotten that I'm in California, so I got sun all year round. Anybody else?
I'm afraid we have to stop, but I guess you will be around outside.
Cannot thank you enough for hearing me out, and thank you for the activism you do. And it's truly been very special for me to be here with all of you this weekend. Thank you.